Hello, welcome back to another one of these videos. Today we are going to be covering the variant triplet, I guess, apostrophe. Triplet prime. I'm not really sure what to call this. As you can see, it is just literally named triplet with an apostrophe after it, but we'll go and go into the rules of this. If you aren't aware of what the normal triplet is, it's basically the opposite of this, where this variant we're currently looking at is that all mines must be part of a row of either 3 orthogonal or diagonal mines. So you can see, like here, for instance, this is a row of 3 orthogonal mines, this is a row of 3 diagonal mines, and you can see some non-examples here, like this mine, for instance, is not a part of a row of 3 in any of the directions it can really go in. See, all of these ones aren't. So as you kind of noticed is that some mines are parts of multiple different rows of 3, like this one, for instance, is part of both this diagonal and this column. That's just kind of normal. Alright, we'll go ahead and get into a puzzle real quick. One thing we can kind of first notice, well actually we know that both of these are mines and these two are non-mines, just from standard Minesweeper rules. We can also go ahead and get that and this from those same rules. Okay. So now, one thing we can kind of consider, first of all, is, I guess with this we can look at mines down here if we wanted, or we can also look around here. This is actually probably going to be more relevant. We can consider if there is a mine here, then we know there's either there's only really 2 rows it can be part of. It's either going to be this kind of row, which breaks the 2 clue, or the same thing but horizontal. Once again, breaks the 2 clue. That tells us there cannot be a mine down here. So there we are. Okay. And now it looks like we might have to go ahead and look into where a mine could be down here for this clue, perhaps. So if there's a mine here, then we know it has to be part of a row of 2 that will either go around here or over here. Either way, that's going to finish off this 2 and make none of these into mines. So there we are. If there's instead a mine here, we actually already have our row of 3 finished. So we don't even worry anymore about it, it's part of a diagonal row. But this also finishes off the 3, which importantly tells us that this one up here is not a mine in either case, we can mark it as such. And now we can kind of further look into this, I guess. Okay, so I guess in the yellow cases, well, nah, we don't need to consider those right now. We can first think about the fact that just by normal Minesweeper logic, we know both of these must be mines. This also now tells us this one down here can't be a mine. If it were, then it would need to be specifically part of this kind of row, but that overloads the 2. So there we are. And, not sure if there's anything else we can garner immediately from this 2 area. Doesn't look like it. One thing we can kind of consider now is just that we have in either one of these cases, we now know that one of the bottom 2 cells here will be a mine for this 3. So we know neither of these are mines. This 5 is finished, as is that 4. There we are. We can actually now see that this mine right here, there's only one kind of row of 3 can be part of, which would be a row of 3 on this diagonal. Not necessarily with that, but like be something like that. Irregardless of where that row actually is, though, we know it's going to have to at least include that cell, just because if it didn't, then we'd only have a row of 2 maximum, so there we go. That also finishes off this 2, this 3 is finished, and we also need to finish off this 1, there we go, and now we can kind of consider where the last mine for this 3 can be. If it's over here, then it is not part of row 3, so therefore it needs to be over here. But in order to finish off a row 3, we have to go 2 more in this direction, and that finishes off the puzzle, because we have no more mines left, so there we are. We'll go ahead and go into a more difficult puzzle. We'll see how long it takes me. This is definitely one of the more difficult variants of the game, but here we go. Okay. One thing we can immediately consider here is if there is a mine up here, then there's only one way to give it a row of 3. Would be, I guess, that, but this means that neither of these can be mines since this 3 clue is finished, and this 3 just doesn't have enough squares left. So we can go ahead and mark this as a non-mine. You can also consider, with this 1, if there is a mine here, then that finishes off the 1, but critically it does so in a way where this can't actually be a part of a row anymore. So we can go ahead and mark this as a non-mine. The 0 clue is now finished. Okay, the next thing I guess we can consider is this 2 clue in relation with this 3. Maybe we should first look into what happens if both of these are mines. then we know that this one needs to be part of a row of 3. The only way to actually do that is for it to go diagonally up here. So there we go. And then we can also consider if only one of these is a mine, then we know both of these will be mines. So critically, we always know this is a mine. There we are. We also actually get that this one over here is a mine. And for this one to be part of a row of 3, it must go diagonally upwards like such. So that also finishes off this 3 up here. There we are. Okay. And the next thing we can consider is just some of the other possible combinations around this 2. If we consider this one, we know this has to be part of a row of 3, so it must go down there, which we already kind of actually also knew from this 2 combination. Then we can say that this mine goes up here as well, and that also finishes off this 3. And then there must be a mine over here as well for this 3 right up there. So there we go. And the last kind of case is if there's just not a mine over there, then there is a mine up here, and there needs to be a mine down here to finish off the row of 3. There then cannot be a mine over there. And something else we can kind of consider, since we already have 2 mines around this 3, we know there can never be a mine up here, because it has to still connect up with one of these 2 to make a row of 3, but that would overload this clue. So there we are. That tells us that this one over here must not always be a mine, just because of the 1-3 difference kind of thing. What that also now gives us is that we know, first of all, we actually know red is now impossible since there are too many mines around the 3 in the red case, so we then know that that one must always be a mine, and getting rid of all the red stuff will be a bit of a pain, but that's okay. We can go ahead and do it. Critically, we also know that in either case, this one up here will not be a mine, just because the one already has one in both the blue and the yellow case. And we can now see that the yellow case is actually no longer possible because of this one clue. So we now know it is just the blue case. So we can go ahead and just mark all the deductions we found from that earlier. There we are. Okay, this 4 needs a 3rd mine down there. There can't be a mine here from this 3. This 3 is finished. So is that 3. This one needs to be part of a row of 3, so we can draw one right there. That 4 is finished, and okay. Next thing we can kind of consider is that this mine needs to be part of a row of 3. The only way to do that is to have it go diagonally up there, so there we go. That 4 is finished. As is this 4, we only have 1 mine left. If that mine's there, it can't connect up in a row of 3, so it must be right here, and there we go. Alright. I guess from here we can go ahead and move on to some combinations with triplet apostrophe. I guess the first one I'll do is that with the mini cross, just because I think it'll be interesting to maybe kind of try and give priority to the special variant combinations. Those aren't actually in the original game. They were added later on in an update, which is interesting. First of all, we can see both of these clues are finished, so there we go. And okay. I guess we can kind of consider some combinations around this 2 clues. Specifically, I'm going to consider the one where there is not a mine here and there are mines here, just because we can pretty easily see that this mine has no row of 3 it can make, so this combination is impossible, thus there must be a mine there. Alright. I'm not sure what a good next place to actually look for this will be. I'm wondering if maybe it'll be something involving this kind of area right here. I'm not completely sure. I guess we can consider what happens if there's a mine in both of the positions for this 1 and see if that leads to anything. So we know from this one that it's going to have to either make a row up there or over there. Either way, this 1 clue will have its mine be in one of the 2 positions I haven't marked. So it'll be either over here or over here, depending on the direction. So that gives us that information. Actually also tells us there can't be a mine up here, because if there were, it wouldn't be able to form a row of 3. So there we are, and this row of 3 must go downwards, like that. And do we get any other information? Yes, we do. We also know that this one's row of 3, either way, will intersect with this 1 clue, so we can also mark that as a non-mine. Okay, if we now consider a mine there instead, let's see. We have kind of 2 options for its row. Its row will either be like that, or it will be going like that, which is interesting. I guess if it goes like this, then we know that these ones are both non-mines, and then through the same string of deductions as before, we can conclude that this one up here is not a mine, just because that one's a non-mine. Of course, if this goes up here, then that's also not a mine since the 1 clue is finished, therefore we conclude this one is never a mine. Now we can finish off that 2, clue right there, and okay. We know for this one to be in a row of 3, the only way to do that is for it to go diagonally down there, so we can finish off that one clue. This contradicts the yellow case, so we know that the red case is actually accurate. And we also can see that this is going to go diagonally upwards right there. That one clue is now finished, so there we are. This 2 clue is also finished. And we can see for this mine right here, the only row 3 can be in is a diagonal one going in that direction, so we can put a mine there, finish off this 2 clue, finish off this 3 clue, finish off that clue as well, and okay. Now, lastly, we can also see this one needs to be in a row of 3. The only one is a vertical row going down there, so there we are. And now that we only have 2 mines left, we're at a point where if we can find any area that requires too many mines to make a row of 3, we can mark that as a non-mine. So for instance, if we put a mine here, the only row of 3 you can make is a vertical one. That requires at least 3 mines, so we thus know this is not a mine. Same thing actually applies over here as well. There we go, that gives us our mine for the 1 clue, and then this one can only form a row of 3 if it goes in that direction. And that gives us our last mine, so we have completed the puzzle. There we are. Alright. I guess next we will go ahead and maybe we'll do Liar. That one is pretty fun. Okay. So let's go ahead and just get into it real quick. First of all, from some of the logic talked about earlier, you can once again see that since this is at most a 2, if there is a mine here, then this has to be a 2. But we can also see that either way, it will overload the 2 and trying to make a triplet, so there we are. Okay. Now we know that there will be a mine either here or here. If it's here, then it has to leave through there. Critically, we know that all of these 2 specifically will be non-mines. The reason I'm calling out those 2 specifically is because if there's a mine here, then we actually don't know where the triplet will go, but we know it will be one of those 2, and then we can rule out both of these in that case as well. So there we are. Okay. Now we can also know in the yellow case that actually finishes off this 1. In the red case, we also get that there are no mines in either of these squares, and thus there can't be a mine there, because this 1 will now be a 0, so we also get that is never a mine. You can kind of notice that in the red case, specifically, if there was a mine here, then this actually would break the 2 clue, because there would be part of a triplet. It needs to go all the way over there, but that's too much for it, so we know that there specifically will be a mine right here. There we are. Okay. Whereas, I don't know if we get anything like that from the yellow case. One thing we do get is that this one is a non-mine in the yellow case. Because of the difference between the 2 and the 3, we know it must be odd since the parity on these is different. What that also actually tells us now is that there can't be a mine here either, or here really, just because there's no room for it to have a row of 3. Well, there can't be a mine here. It could be in a row of 3, but there can't because of the non-mine there. It puts the 2 down to being a 1. So we can mark this now as a non-mine. There we are. And we can now actually see that the yellow case is incorrect, just because in order for this 2 to have a mine in either position, it needs to have a row of 3 going through here. But that, of course, will break the 2 clue, because it will then be exactly 2. So we now know that the red case is correct. We can go ahead and mark everything as such for that. It's really just those things. There we are. Alright. The next thing I guess we can consider is maybe what to do about this 5. Because we know that this 5 is either going to be a 4 or a 6. Either way, there's going to be at least 1 mine over here, just because it only has 5 mines. But then that tells us this 1 clue should actually be a 2, so we can mark both of these. Finish off that 1 clue, we can finish this row of 3 going up there for this mine. This 3 clue is now finished, so there we are. Okay. Now, I guess the next thing we can consider from here is what to do about mines in maybe in the area around this 4 clue, for instance. We can kind of consider first if this 2 clue is just finished here. Then we also know there cannot be a mine here because it's row 3, it's just not able to be formed. So then we know that there must be 1 mine in one of these 2 positions. If that mine is here, then it needs to go across here, right, in order to form a row of 3. But that will break this 1 clue, it has too many around it, so we thus know that the mine must be over here. As for its row 3, actually, is there a lot of options. Well, specifically, there are 2 viable ones since this 5 clue is now finished. It can either go diagonally downwards or diagonally upwards. Either way, it's not entirely clear where it is just from this, so we're not going to mark anything right now. In the alternative case, where this 2 has both of these, we also know this one must be a mine just for this clue. We're going to give it a row 3. So then this 4 needs one more mine in it. If that mine was up here, we would once again run into the same problem. So we know that its last mine must be down there. That tells us there will always be a mine here and always be a non-mine up there. There we are. And this actually also allows us to just make the same deductions down here for this 3 clue. This 0 clue is finished, as is this 3 clue now. Okay. So this actually also tells us where this row of 3 is. Specifically, it goes up there. And for this 5 clue, we know it must be a 4 exactly. And if this one's a non-mine, or specifically, rather, if it isn't this combination, then there's always going to be a gap, because it'll either be something like this or this. Neither of which can actually properly make a row of 3. So we know that it's going to be this row of 3 here. And we actually now only have 3 mines left, 3 spaces left. We are finished. Alright. I'll probably do 1 or 2 more of these. Maybe next I'll do partition, just because it's kind of got an interesting, or it's different flavor than the other ones we've been looking at. Okay, so we can start by noting this clue's already finished. It's a 0 clue. And now I guess we can kind of consider maybe mines around one of the numbers over here, for instance. Yes, okay. So if we assume that... First of all, we can actually see there just can't be a mine over here because there's no triplet that can be formed with it, so we can mark that. Now then, we're going to first assume there's a mine over here. That tells us there's not a mine there. I know there must be mines in both of these positions just to give it a row of 3. And I don't know if this is going to lead us to anything from here. It's hard to tell. It doesn't necessarily look like it. Okay. This is kind of something a bit different, but let's consider what happens if there isn't a mine here specifically. And the reason why I've been kind of thinking about this is just because of this 2's interaction with this 1, I think might actually cause a problem here, right? So we have a few options for how we do the partitions. One of them is just to put them like this, but we can see that breaks this 1 clue. So that tells us there must be a partition over here. But in order for this to form a triplet, it must go diagonally down here, which gives this one at least 2 partitions. So I think that means this must always be a mine. So you can see my intuition, I guess, has been proven correct here. So there we are. Okay. I guess one thing we can next kind of consider is if there just isn't mines in like some positions, like over here, for instance. Since we already know there's going to be a mine somewhere in like this kind of region, we can just generally note that there will be a mine around this side of the 1. So if there isn't a mine there, then there cannot be mines in either of these positions, and thus there cannot be mines over here or over here. And actually, I think I can just make this more general, just saying if there isn't a mine here, or even actually over here, really. We'll just kind of make it more general, or I guess more constrained, so if this does prove something, it proves a larger amount of things. So then we know there's a mine over there. We can mark both of these now as non-mines, and then by our restriction, we know that this one must be a mine here. But yeah, this runs into problems because this actually might be something that we have to look more into because it might differ depending on the number of them we put here. But we can see that this mine, first of all, for this 2 partition, there cannot be a mine down there, but then this can no longer be part of row 3. So we can then see that this one up here, at the very least, cannot be a non-mine. So there we are. We can also note if this one's still a non-mine, then this mine must go downwards like this, but this breaks the 2 partition, so this one over here must also be a mine. And once again, the same kind of logic applies if this one here is a non-mine, so there we go. And I suspect that's more or less all that we're really going to get from that kind of angle of things, but yeah, it's a pretty good result. I guess the next thing to consider is if this one over here is not a mine, then we still kind of get this situation here. Right, and we also know that this group cannot ever go down this far. So I wonder if this tells us anything. So I guess we can first consider if there wasn't a mine there in this situation, then we kind of run into this kind of situation, which doesn't really seem to cause any problems, right? And of course, if there instead was a mine here, then this one still can't be a mine, but that's really about it. I guess something else we can note is that if there were a mine here, then for this one partition there must be a mine there, which breaks things. So we know this one here is a non-mine. There we go. Looks like that's what we need to find for this. We know there must be a mine here to put 3 partitions around this 3. And we can also notice that I guess we can now consider where else there can or can't be mines. If there is a mine here, then we know there are not mines in all of these positions, like such, just because of the 3 partition. And what else does this give us? I'm not completely sure. Maybe not a lot, to be honest. It's because regardless of whether they're, well, I guess we can see that if there weren't a mine here, then none of these could be mines, but that breaks the 1 clue. So we know there must be a mine there in this situation as well. Actually, maybe that's something I'll actually look at real quick. If this one here is a non-mine, then we know that since this one just being a mine on its own doesn't work, there must be a mine somewhere in this side of things, so then that implies this one's a non-mine, which does not leave enough room for the 3, therefore this one must be a mine. There we are. Okay. Now I wonder if... No, we assume this one's a non-mine, that one up there being a non-mine falls just from this 2 partition, but we also then can see that by putting a mine there and putting a mine over there, we have completed a row of 3, or actually we don't even need really a mine over there, just that's enough to finish up this 1 clue properly. Of course, if we instead assume there is not a mine here, then I think actually, yeah, it does once again run into problems, because we know there must be a mine on these 2 positions, but that puts it up to 3 partitions around this 2, so there we go. Yeah, you can now finish up all of these clues. There we go. Okay. So, I guess next we can note that if there is a mine here, well, that runs into problems. There's no valid triplet that can be made with it, so there we are. And, okay. Same thing actually applies here. There is no triplet that can be made with that region. Okay. Now I guess we can consider, I think at this point we're probably going to get to a point where we have to kind of consider some of the larger grid size logic. First of all, if there is no mine here, then we know there are no mines in any of these positions, but that only leaves us with 6 squares left, but we have 7 mines. So we know there must be a mine up here. Alright. But now from this 1 partition, we know that there must also be a mine there, so there we go. Some pretty good information. And, okay. Next, I guess we can consider if there is no mine here specifically, or rather, we'll phrase this as if there is a mine here. Then we know that there cannot be a mine here by the 3 partition. By the 1 partition, there can be no mine there, and then there can't be mines here or here just because there's enough room. And we can see this does not leave us with enough space for our 5 mines. Therefore, there cannot be a mine here, and okay. We can also see that since this one is no longer a mine, this one down here also can't be a mine. There's no valid triplet, and that leaves us with 5 squares left, 5 mines left. There we go, that'll finish the puzzle, and I think I'm going to go ahead and call this good for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Next time we will be covering battleships, so yeah. See you guys next time. Peace.